Folks out in the hallway. Ending. Thanks. If you could just close the door if they don't want
Door
to.
can't be, it can't, one door can shut, but the other one has to be.
Okay, no, just that one.
Yeah.
Thanks, Blake. Get your sergeant stripes for those. Welcome. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Warren Planning Board, June 23rd, 2025. We'll start with a roll call. Beginning, Rick Batten,
Carrie Delapaz,
Ashley Maderas.
Fred Massey,
Jenny K. Flanagan.
Tyler Dixon.
Blake Costa. And we do have a quorum. The approval of the minutes from the 5/19/2025. We received those meeting minutes earlier, before the meeting. Is there any corrections to be made on those?
I had submitted 2 corrections and they were minor typos.
Okay. And Alice, Alyssa has
Yeah.
made those changes, okay. An acceptance of the minutes with the 2 changes. Motion, Rick, I'll second it, all in favor?
Aye.
I wasn't here, so I'm going to.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, Ashley.
Hey, Fred?
Yep.
You have one more member.
One more board member.
Where? Oh, Tim, he's, oh, I'm sorry, you're sitting there because there's no room, there's not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Second alternate.
Okay, great, got it. Tim White, ladies and gentlemen, Tim White.
Even in that location, just to wait, participate, second alternate, just can't vote.
Okay. First order of business is 4 Highland Avenue, Warren, Rhode Island. The owners, Andrea Rose Stewart Revocable Trust, Plat 17, Lot 76 and 79. Subdivision of adjourning properties, taking land from Plat 17, Lot 79, and adding to Lot 76. We received this information before the meeting, and the is the applicant here? Is it necessary for the applicant to be here to hear this?
That's up to the board. Is it essential? No.
All right, okay.
Depends on whether or not you want to proceed on this without the applicant being present.
It's a pretty straightforward movement of a line of 2 properties that are both non-conforming. But one has the house that's on the lot has the boundary line very close to their driveway, and this would actually bring it in line with the adjoining property line as well. So it's not, I see no issues with it. It was indicated that this was not done for the purposes of development. There was no development associated with this lot line adjustment.
You just have to clear title. You can definitely go forward with this if you want.
Any objections to moving forward with this?
Is it the same owner? For both lots?
Yes.
Uh,
Both.
So that actually makes it.
Yes, they own both properties.
Yes.
I make a motion, to move forward with it.
Okay,
Second,
and so motion to approve the application is presented.
well, do we want to discuss it or just?
Do you want to discuss it? Anything?
I reviewed the application. I'm okay moving forward on this.
I'll note that one of the lots is significantly undersized. This is making it less undersized. The other lot is marginally undersized and is making it marginally more undersized. But generally, it's improving conditions in the neighborhood, and there are existing dwellings on both lots at this time.
Is this in the village overlay?
Yes, it is. It's R40 zoning district, but it's in the overlay. So you notice on the map, a lot of the lots are undersized. So And this again is unified, this would be the planning board voting for both the variance as well as the subdivisions. You could take two separate actions.
In some areas of the village overlay, the double lots were combined. And this was not the case in that area?
No, it wasn't because of where the house was. This was never merged for purposes of zoning.
Okay,
But Allison is correct, 2 votes. The dimensional variance should be first. Then the moving of the lot line would be second.
Would I be correct in understanding that another reason why the lots weren't merged is because there were actually houses on each lot already?
That's correct, yes.
And they probably were under separate ownership at the time of the merger actions anyway. It looks like from the deed references on the survey that they got bought at separate times.
That's correct. The other thing is the town's merger provision in the zoning ordinance only applies to vacant property that's non-conforming. That's why this doesn't apply here.
okay, so, any more discussion? First motion for the dimensional variance,
And motion to approve the dimensional variance.
second,
Second.
Tyler, all in favor?
Aye.
Second motion to approve the
Subdivision.
subdivision
Make a
itself.
motion, we approve the subdivision.
Second.
Second, Ashley, all in favor? Aye.
Do we need to read the findings into the record?
Well-
They're in your memo, the findings for zoning relief as well as your subdivision findings.
Your motion could refer back to the findings that are in the memo.
And we'll include that in the decision. It'll be sent to the applicant and then it'll be the applicant's choice to record the subdivision and execute the subdivision. So you can approve it tonight and then the
So should we
applicant decide whether or not
amend
to
that
proceed
last
with
motion to reflect the memo that you wrote
that.
out?
Correct, yes.
You agree with the
Okay.
findings in the memo?
So we'll agree, I'll make a motion to amend the motion to accept Allison's memo
I'll second that.
as part of that. Tyler, all in favor? Okay. And that's it on that one. The next matter is Settlers Green Major Subdivision Land Development, owner Last Ever Realty, plat 20, lot 16, 159 and 164. This is a public hearing. Before we go any further, first of all, an apology is in order. The original proposal came before us, and when the board requested certain conditions be met, the applicant responded and came to the board at a regularly scheduled meeting and asked to be heard. And under the advice of the planner at that time, it was advised to not allow the applicant to make their presentation because in the planner's words, it didn't meet the conditions that he felt should have been met. As a result, that applicant was turned away. This was in some way, in some cases, in all cases, and in this case particular, the wrong decision to make. And the town and the planning board were ultimately held to account by the State Housing Appeals Board and later by the Superior Court for not allowing the applicant to come back and present their case after they had responded to the concerns that the planning board had raised. You know, I take responsibility for that as the chairman, but this was new ground for us, the comprehensive permit process, and I was relying on the advice of our planner in moving forward on that. So as a result, this has created a long process. The planner meant well in what he was doing, but he was absolutely wrong in recommending that, and we were wrong to not allow that applicant to make their case as opposed to, and be heard. So we want to be sure that today the applicant is heard fully. We will ask a few questions if necessary for clarification. The board, we will then open it up to a public hearing. As is always the case here, we ask that you keep your comments to about 3 minutes. There, long-winded descriptions of things are not welcome, and they extend the process for everyone. If someone has said something that you agree with, there's no problem with saying, I completely agree with that. That is an important point, and it gives greater meaning to that particular point. But to come in and repeat the same thing, but just use different language is not what we want to have happen. We're going to close the meeting at 9:30. Everyone will get a chance to speak after the applicant has done their presentation. After the public has spoken, and, you know, whether or not we're able to meet everyone's desires by 9:30 remains to be seen. If so, the meeting will be continued to our next regularly scheduled meeting. At which time, after the public has had their say and the applicant is given a chance for rebuttal, at that point, the planning board begins its deliberations. So that's the process of moving forward on this particular application. The project description is a residential development, including 12 single-family dwelling units, 2 4-story garden apartment buildings with 54 units each, 1 and 2 bedrooms. We will turn this over to the applicant at this point. Sure. Are there Alyssa and Zero?
Is there a microphone on?
You in the sound system?
I watch movies from home. Half the time I can't hear what people are saying.
Borrow that here.
I'm being appreciative, believe me.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Bill Landry. I'm a partner with Blish and Kavanaugh at 30 Exchange
Can you hear him
Terrace.
in the back?
Did they say yes, sir? Okay.
Some did.
All right, I'll try to keep it up. 30 Exchange Terrace in Providence, and I represent Last Ever Realty, the applicant in this matter, and have since this project was filed. The matter's been pending for a while, as the chair has noted. I'll give you some of the key background facts. I know that a few of you were involved the first time around. It may have been just Mr. Massey. I'm not completely certain, but I suspect that this is new to a lot of you. We filed a large number of materials and have some additional materials to present. We do understand that we'll be making an effort to complete our presentation substantially within 2 hours. Our full presentation depends on what the abutters have to say, and it seems unlikely that the whole thing would be finished tonight, and there's likely to have another meeting, but we'll make and we do have some requests to the board to utilize their authority to assist us in getting some additional information from one of the town departments, and I'll get into that shortly. But I'll start with a little bit of background here. The project's close to Route 103, Kickamuit Avenue's on the east, Denver Avenue is to the south. To the north and west are properties owned by the Bristol County Water Authority. It really envelops most of our property. To the west was what used to be a reservoir, the Bristol County Water Authority reservoir prior to the removal of the dam, and that area ceasing to be utilized as a reservoir. So there's a lot of undevelopable area on two major sides of this property, and it's very heavily wooded as it gets toward Kinnicut at this time. The total parcel size is just a little over 16 acres. There are 3 lots, all vacant lots, but 3 parcels that comprise that 16-acre tract. On the south side of the property, lot 16 is 10.4 acres. And the south side of the property is lot 159, 5.2 acres. It's zoned R10. And then on the north side, lot 16, 10.4 acres is zoned R40. That's the larger parcel that extends down to the former reservoir. On the south side of the property, the 16 acres ends at Denver Avenue. But between those two tracts and Denver Avenue is a private right-of-way known as Dallas Avenue. It's 20 feet wide. Right now, we're proposing to expand that to 40 feet to accommodate this development. The apartment aspect of the development will be on the north side. The residential aspect of the development will be on the south side. And the residential component will be similar in scope and style to the residential properties in the vicinity. The proposed housing involves 12 single-family houses that will run along Denver and Dallas avenues at the south end. Again, similar in size and square footage as existing residences. They're 3-bedroom houses. They're proposed for home ownership with 25% of the homes being deed restricted for low and moderate income families. That's the single family unit component.
Excuse me, I missed something. You said
Yeah.
10% or
25%
Okay.
are designated as deed restricted for low and moderate income. Low and moderate income is generally described as housing that's affordable to families earning between 80% and 120% of the area median income. These are not Section 8 type housing units, not that that's a bad thing, but this is worker housing, retiree housing, housing for people who have mortgages and pay mortgages and are raising families. In addition to those 12 single family homes, we're proposing 108 apartments in 2 4-story buildings. Each building will contain 54 units. And the units are not to be filled with school children because the bedroom sizes are 1 and 2 bedroom units. There'll be 60 units of those apartments that have 1 bedroom and 1 bath. There'll be 48 of those apartments that have 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. There will be children, but not likely a high number of children. So that's the general scope of the project. We're at the preliminary plan stage of review, which you know is the second of the actual application approval processes, two of the three for major land development projects. The project has been through the pre-application stage, it's been through the master plan stage, and it's secured master plan approval as to all the major planning elements on June 29th of 2023, when the State Housing Appeals Board overturned a town denial of the project. The project became vested at the time of that master plan approval on the laws, state laws and the local laws that were in effect at the time of that master plan approval in 2023. And with respect to that master plan application, the board was required to follow the laws, state and local, that were in effect when the application for that, when that application was filed and certified as complete, which occurred in the middle of the COVID pandemic back on July 17th, 2020. So 2022 rather. So at that time, the project, the law applicable to the project had to be what was in effect then. When the master plan approval was given, the state and local law in effect then was vested and remained and applied to the continuing permitting processes and to the building of the project as a vested approval for the major planning elements. The State Housing Appeals Board master plan approval was appealed to the Superior Court, and that suspended the time periods associated with that master plan approval. Appeal was filed by the town. The appeal was decided in favor of the applicant, affirming the earlier master plan approval. And that occurred almost a year ago on July 12th of 2024. So that's where we've been through all of this since the process started back in 2020. With the application. The master plan approval decisions that constitute the approval itself really focused on a couple of major issues that were presented at that time, dealt with by the planning board, and then superseded by the State Housing Appeals Board and the Superior Court decisions. And they included the affordable housing status of the town as of that time, the presence or non-presence of an affordable housing plan, because that's important to the standards that controlled the decision at that time. It also involved the impact issues, the issues of potential environmental impacts and health, safety, and welfare impacts. And that principally involved the issue of sewer connection to the project, the capacity of the town's sewer department to serve the project as proposed, the volume of wastewater and so forth. Sewer, water, the ability of Bristol County Water Authority to serve the domestic needs of the development in these units, as well as the fire flow needs of the fire department. That was an issue that was covered by the master plan approval as it had developed at that time. And also traffic. there were two traffic reports presented at the master plan stage by Bryant and Associates. Todd Brayton, the traffic engineer, is also here tonight. He's updated those traffic reports to provide more current counts, traffic counts and so forth. That updated traffic report has been submitted to the town, and Mr. Brayton will be testifying about it tonight. So the way this works is that the master plan is not an approval to construct anything, but it is an approval for the basic planning elements of the project, the density, the road configuration, parking, the utility services, the basic planning components. The preliminary plan that we are proceeding on tonight, next level, usually takes a little less time, but not always. But it principally involves a review of engineering issues to determine whether the engineering assumptions that were made at the master plan stage have somehow been displaced or found to be erroneous, such that some major planning premise of the master plan cannot be actually put into effect. It's a stage at which an advanced level of engineering is involved, more highly engineered plans. It's also a period in which the environmental plans are further developed and in which state approvals are applied for, but not necessarily received. For example, it's not our obligation at this stage of review to show Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management approvals for this project for the wetlands buffers or for the RIPD's impacts, stormwater management, and so forth. We're not obligated to show that, but we will be showing that because we do hold in hand the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management permits for this project based on very thorough engineering and their own independent engineering review with respect to all of those issues. If we were a project that was within the Coastal Resources Management Council jurisdiction, which this project is not, we would have to secure by the final plan stage, not the preliminary plan stage, any applicable Coastal Resources Management Council approvals, but those approvals are not required, as we established at the master plan stage and will cover again tonight. This project is under the jurisdiction of Rhode Island DEM by agreement with CRMC. The division line for that jurisdiction has not changed. The project is still with the RIDEM, including impacts to the former reservoir of the Bristol County Water Authority. Now I'll address where the project stands with respect to those major planning component issues of the master plan. And this won't take very long, but I think you'll find it helpful and it'll help keep the testimony of the expert witnesses a little bit more compact for me to tell you where we are on these issues. I'll take the water issue first. The court determined that we had presented enough information at the master plan stage to show that there was no major issue concerning water subject to further engineering review. And what we presented at that time was a hydraulic analysis that was done at the request of the Bristol County Water Authority with respect to the project and its demand for water, domestic and fire flow, pressure, water availability, a very detailed analysis by PAR Engineering that was provided. And that also came with a a letter from a little bit later, a letter from the Bristol County Water Authority indicating that they will give water service to the project and are satisfied with where that stands. We submitted 2 binders to you electronically and several paper copies. The first of those binders was everything we presented the last time we were here for master plan. The second binder and the application materials for the preliminary plan application. And the more recent binder was of more recent materials as of a month or so ago, as those issues developed a little bit further after our application was filed. So we did provide another copy of that PAR engineering analysis as part of the tab 10 of the binder. And we also provided the Bristol County Water Authority approval of service letter as part of that same tab right behind the PAR engineering study. We also provided back at that time an analysis by the project architects and engineers, both of whom are here tonight, that further explained how the project architecture and the materials that were being used and the fact that there were 2 buildings, how those issues related to the fire flow requirements and what we have to provide in response to those requirements. So those materials were available to the court and to the State Housing Appeals Board and discussed in their analysis and provided a basis for the master plan findings that we're in very good shape on the water. What has happened then has only further confirmed those initial findings. We did some additional, we got an additional will serve letter from Bristol County Water Authority after some flow testing that was done. And that letter was in March, on March 22nd of 2024. And we got a further opinion letter from Anino and Zaid, the architects and engineers, in February of this year, confirming that the properties have to be dealt with as 2 separate buildings and that all of the requirements are met for the fire flow and domestic needs for the project. When Fuss & O'Neill did some engineering work for the town over the last few months, which was one of the reasons this hearing has been delayed, the town had retained Fuss & O'Neill to look into engineering issues further. They suggested additional flow testing and an updated will serve letter from Bristol County Water Authority just to see if the flow is any different in 2025 than it was back in 2021, 2022, when the first analyses were done. So we did additional flow testing work this past spring and provided that to you in tab 19, the more recent submission that has the additional fire flow data affirming the same flows or the same pressure and the same analysis that was done in the first set of reviews. And in response to that, Bristol County Water Authority more recently issued an updated will serve letter indicating that they will serve the project. So the engineering record has gotten better and more complete as a result of what's happened most recently. We did receive a letter from the fire chief on Friday that questioned whether the available gallons per minute is adequate. There's some language in the PAR report that indicates that 1,000 or more gallons per minute are required at a certain pressure. And the most recent fire flow test came out a little less than 1,000 gallons per minute. But the fire chief, to his credit and candor, acknowledged in his email that the pounds per square inch value has something to do with the actual pressure. It's not just what comes out of the hydrant in a flow test. There is pounds per square inch that's available through the system that makes a difference in terms of what the real capability and the real gallons per minute calculation is. And he asked if we would be planning to provide that additional information. And between Friday and this afternoon, we did provide a further report by Douglas and Nino and Zaid and their engineers and architects from those firms that are here, just to confirm that issue, explaining how the readings from that flow test actually show more water availability to the project than was anticipated by PAR Engineering. So we'll be covering that in the expert testimony. And that's where the water issue stands. The sewer issue, there was also significant discussion in the master plan approval that the sewer issue had been developed to a high degree in the master plan stage and showed a reasonable expectation of sewer service being available to the project. And part of that involved some work that was done at the planning board stage before the planning board denial on the sewer issue. The one and only issue that was raised at that time by the town's consulting engineers that they felt they needed assistance on from the project engineers involved an area of their infrastructure line on Metacomet Avenue in which a 24-inch pipe turned into a 15-inch pipe. And there was some concerns on their part that with the addition of these new units, that 15-inch pipe might represent a bottleneck and might impede the system's ability to service the wastewater from this project unless a workaround or a detour around that area was made part of the design. And in response to that, and this is all part of the master plan record, and it's reflected in the two decisions, State Housing Appeals Board and the court, the town's engineers and the project engineers together engaged a company to do flow testing of the area just downstream of that 15-inch pipe to determine the flow that was coming through that pipe under different conditions. And they put measuring devices in there that could test it every day or every hour for 90 days. And the reason they picked 90 days was that would represent a variety of different weather conditions, a lot of rain, cold, warmer weather, and that was deemed by the two engineering companies to be a good indicator. At that time, the town's engineers thought that there was 1,400, I believe is the number, gallons per minute that was flowing through that line, and they felt that represented the limits of the 15-inch section pipe. So the real purpose of this additional testing every day, which the results of which came on the computers of the engineers every day, they didn't have to do anything, they could see them, they were uploaded, it was summarized at the end, and both sets of engineers got copies. The result was that the flow through that pipe is dramatically less than 1,400 gallons minute. It was down to as low as somewhere between 300 and 500 most of the time. But it never got to more than 30 or 40% of the pipe's actual capacity. And that study analysis has never been disputed by the engineering firm that cooperated in that work, Woodard and Curran. And it's all in writing. It was all presented to the court, and it was all accepted by the State Housing Appeals Board and by the Superior Court as part of the Superior Court approval. There has been no engineering work, including the town's own engineering work at the preliminary plan stage, that has questioned the results of that analysis. We have asked the town sewer operator to issue a will serve letter. He did issue a will serve letter for this property. We asked him to confirm that the town's satisfied with the testing results that occurred a couple of years ago, and that we don't have to redo that, and that's no longer an issue or an impediment. And we have not been able to get a response to that. The sewer operator, who's been very courteous, we've been asking for this for a year, and we provided to the town all of the relevant communications along that line, and he's currently indicating that it's going to be Mr. DeSisto that has to decide if that's still an issue and if they're going to issue a will serve letter. So one of the things, the only thing we're asking the board to do tonight is to help us facilitate that sewer connection letter without conditions. We've got one for the property, but it doesn't indicate whether or not that issue of the bottleneck is still an issue. And you know, there needs to be more discussion around that. We're prepared to have it, but it has not been presented by any engineer at this point in any way different than the previous engineers concluded back at the master plan stage. We have a certificate of completeness that we've submitted everything we have to submit. This is something that we can't develop on our own, the actual unconditional will serve letter. Planning board can request additional information from us beyond what was required in the submission, and we understand that, but we need the town's help if the town wants that actual connection letter, we're going to need the town's help to secure it. So that's where we stand on the sewer. Well, actually, there's another level to that it came up as we were, and I'm almost done, by the way. I didn't mean to take this much time, but I'm very close to the end. But this is important to the sewer issue. When we were presenting this application and it was being reviewed by Herb Durfee, who was then the planner, he certified our application complete, but indicated that he was preparing an analysis of how much sewerage would be required by the Metacomet Avenue rezoning redevelopment district project that the town's been working on for several years. And he said he had been asked to calculate how much sewerage might be needed to support that development. And then he left the town, and that we still haven't seen that analysis. But our position on that is that analysis really is not relevant to us. There is no Metacomet area zoning district. There are proposals There's a proposed comprehensive plan that embraces a plan to have housing there. It doesn't say anything about affordable housing, but it says housing. And we understand and respect and hope that that initiative goes forward at some point in the future. The zoning ordinance hasn't been amended, the district doesn't exist. The comprehensive plan amendments to support it don't exist. And we had vested approvals for this project that have been in place since 2022. That require that the project proceed through the rest of the permitting process and through construction based on the rules that were in place at the time, based on the zoning ordinance that was in place at the time, not some future thing. So we don't have to wait for these things to happen and for other projects to be developed and put in place and given sewer before a sewer allocation can be provided to our to our project. So to the extent that that whole notion of getting the redevelopment project out ahead of this vested project is part of the reason for not issuing the sewer connection permit. We have to stand very firmly on the premise that that's got nothing to do with us. The town hasn't turned down anybody else for projects based on whatever sewer allocation might go to the Metacomet Avenue zoning district. There have been projects that have coming in and out of here through the 5 years we've been waiting to get back here. There's no question that the town has more than enough capacity to serve our project. That's the only issue that we think is relevant. But I thought it important to mention that as it relates to the sewer issue. Traffic issue, I'll let Todd Brayton do the talking, but as part of the master plan approval, again, this was discussed by the court. Very good traffic report, traffic counts, virtually no material change in traffic, very good levels of surface, good sight distances, an excellent result of the two traffic reports that were provided, one in July 2019, one in January of 2021. Those two reports are at tabs 13 and 14 of the submission. And we presented an updated traffic study dated a month or two ago by Todd Brayton because the current Fuss and O'Neill folks thought that there should be another look at what the traffic conditions are at this time and the traffic demands for certain other projects that have been built since then. So Mr. Brayton did that in a very detailed report and came to the same conclusion that there's very little change in the traffic situation, still very high levels of service and safety, safe site distances. So those are the major issues. The fire chief was interested in the turning radius for fire trucks, whether they can go around the development easily. This has happened as part of the preliminary plan process. We provided a turning radius engineered plan, Principi Engineering. Fire chief was satisfied with it, and his sign off on the design of the parking and driveways and so forth. And the turning radii are exhibit 21, tab 21 to what we've submitted. There'll be some, and we will also be presenting the RIDEM approvals. There's a number of different documents, tabs 15 to 21 of the most recent set of exhibits that have the approved plans, maintenance and operating and maintenance agreements, watershed maps, the whole litany of materials that comes along with the RIDM approvals. And then the engineers will be addressing the standards for waivers that have been requested for this project. The State Housing Appeals Board, the Planning Board never considered the issue of waivers, and never considered the waivers, the first time around. It was a very short hearing and that was not covered. So it was up to the appellate bodies at the state level to decide which waivers would continue to be before the planning board at this preliminary plan stage. And they were very careful in the Shab decision to identify which waivers those are. And the standard for these waivers is a very moderate standard dealing with practicality, practical, whether it's practicable or not to have full compliance with these particular design requirements, and whether there's a good reason associated with the size of the project in order for those waivers to reasonably be granted. And those three waivers, about which you'll hear some testimony tonight, are waiver number 3, which involves parking lot requirements. It has a requirement based on the number of units, and it has a minimum of 1 island for every 8 parking spots. And we are designing less than 1 island for every 8 parking spots, because we have designed the project to be up against very natural buffers that already provide a vegetative screen. And there are some logistical issues associated with that the engineers will address. So that was one of the 3 waivers that is still before the planning board for consideration. That's waiver number 3. Waiver number 5 was for street trees along the street pavement. Again, the landscape plan shows for lots of street trees and vegetation. Having them at the required intervals would interfere with the underground water lines and sewer lines and drainage facilities. So the program of how much separation there has to be between street trees and where they have to go has been slightly modified. It's not like there's not a great program put forth in the landscaping plan. It's just that there are these impracticability issues of making these things work together. The third and last waiver that remains before the board is whether bituminous Cape Cod berms will be permitted in lieu of concrete or granite street curbing. That's a maintenance issue. It's a cost issue. It's one that we think makes sense and practical reason. And the engineers will address that as well. We have one abutter who is concerned about the drainage in front of her house. She's taken the time to write a letter. Her name is Mrs. Kennedy, and we know Deborah Kennedy. We know where her house is. It's not at a low spot. It's a spot that our stormwater management program will help take drainage away from and not add to it. So we're going to address that as well as any other individual abutter issues that come up tonight. We're very pleased to be able to do that. On the affordable housing issue, a big part of the master plan decision had to do with the town's progress with affordable housing. And it was noted in both decisions that the town doesn't have an approved affordable housing plan. That's important because the major standard here is whether what's being proposed is consistent with the town's approved affordable housing plan. And if the town doesn't have one, it's a much easier lift for the applicant. The town still doesn't have an approved affordable housing plan. It did have a town council approved affordable housing plan some time ago that expired. And that's the only thing we have that's close to a town-approved affordable housing plan. And one of the components of that plan, as was noted at the State Housing Appeals Board and Superior Court level, was that this property should be used for higher density development to support the town's housing and this property and affordable housing objectives because of its proximity to infrastructure and because of the extent of the sensitive environmental areas of town that don't provide good, that are not good candidates for higher density housing. This was found to be one of the few remaining parcels that is a good candidate for high density apartment type housing. And we have a similar project, a very short distance for us, Kickamuit Village, that's already built and operating. At the time we went through this whole thing, the town's affordable housing progress since the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act went into effect in the early 90s had gone down backwards from 4 point something to under to just over 4%. During the time since we got the master plan approval, it's gone down even further to under, it went down even further to just under 4%, 3.8% as of October of 2024. At the technical review committee meeting that we had, there was some discussion by an abutter as to whether the modifications to the state law last year, 2024, that allowed the town to count Section 8 vouchers as if they were actual affordable housing units. Section 8 vouchers go with the tenant and they can take them to other states. But the state law was amended to allow Section 8 vouchers to be counted. That amendment became effective in July of 2024. That has no bearing on this project, which is a vested project back from 2022 and 2023. Long before that, that was decided under a different set of standards. So, but even if those amendments had been applicable to this project, which they're not, the number of Section 8 houses in housing units in Warren is only enough to get the town up a little over 6%. Those statistics were released by Rhode Island Housing a week or so ago, 10 days or so ago. And there were only one or two municipalities in the state, including Burrillville and I think Woonsocket, that have made it to the 10% with the help of the Section 8 voucher issue. But that's not in the near future for the town of Warren. The town, the most recent statistics from the Housing Works Rhode Island Fact Book, which is what the Rhode Island Housing and the state and the courts have relied on in the past, are that even with those Section 8 vouchers, 1,629 households in Warren are cost burdened, meaning that they can't afford to housing that costs 30% or less of the household income. And that's with those vouchers, 1,629 households. 22% of those households are homeowners, 636 households, and 53% are renters, 993. So you've got 1,600 people in the town right now that are cost burdened and living below the minimum standards for being able to afford housing.
Excuse me, could you please, as you're talking about the affordability, can you please
Yeah.
tell me the cost of the units that you'll be renting?
That's a moving target because it changes every time the interest rate changes. I can get you that information. it hasn't been done for a couple of months, and the real numbers are not going to apply until, I don't want to guess at it. I will find that and provide it to you, if not tonight, at the next hearing.
And do you have the area median income?
I can get that for you too, the most recent one. We provided we had to provide a letter of eligibility from Rhode Island Housing as part of the master plan stage, and obviously those numbers have changed, but we've run that analysis, and I will provide those numbers to you. I just have one more,
No.
yes. Yes. I have one more issue that I'd like to cover, just anticipating responses by members of the public here, and having attended in this room the technical review committee meeting on this project. There was some discussion that may be repeated tonight that was presented through Malcolm Spaulding regarding climate change initiatives. And he was proposing to do a study for CRMC as to what 500-year flood impacts would do with respect to this particular site. And the town obviously is very familiar with that issue. Generally, the town has enacted forward-looking regulations and about the market to Metacomet area and climate change in future years, and the need to plan around that. We're not in that area. The proposal was for some CRMC work and potential future CRMC regulations. There are no such regulations. This is an initiative that may happen at some point. When it happens, it'll be applicable to everybody in the town. It's not applicable to anybody in the town. There is no regulation. There's no CRMC jurisdiction over this project at this point. And there are no CRMC regulatory requirements for us to have to comply with today, much less when we became vested under the rules that were in place 3 or 4 years ago. So I do want to mention that before, and we do want to respond to whatever the butters do present tonight. Another point on that is that the reservoir, as I think I mentioned, is no longer a reservoir. It remains under DEM control, but it's not a drinking water area. It's now brackish, I guess, because of the removal of the dam. So the risks that were associated with the watershed are moderated by the fact that it's not a reservoir, and also by the DEM approval that took specifically into consideration that water body and the stormwater management efforts that would be in place. There is another review stage, the final plan stage of review. We don't think that if CRMC comes out with regulations before the final plan stage, that we would be subject to them as a vested project. But that would be something to be considered at the final plan stage of review when state approvals are relevant. They're not part of the preliminary plan stage of review. So we have a couple of witnesses tonight. We have the project engineer, Tom Principe, and possibly Karen Beck from his firm. We have Eric Immelin from Zaid Engineering, and Ron Zaid. I'm sorry, Eric is from Anino, Douglas Anino Architects, and then Ron Cody is from Zane Engineering. They will address briefly the water flow issues and how that picture has actually improved over the last couple of years. And then Todd Brayton is the traffic expert who will go through the main conclusions of his report. So unless there are any questions of me, I'd like to call Tom Principe, and if Ms. Oswald could, I believe do we have a laptop, Tom, that we can use to plug in the plan? Can't do that?
You don't have an Apple adapter.
Okay.
Send it to.
Well, I know the board's got copies of the
Yeah.
project plan, so we'll have to,
Do you have an
if
HDMI?
we can.
We have the HDMI.
Yeah, I have an adapter.
You have Apple.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order. What we're gonna see is what the board has in hard copies, correct?
Yes, correct.
No.
Let's see what happened first.
Sam? Ask it.
No, I don't. This is.
Why don't you do later? Like, we don't need to say that, or do we?
Just had it.
Listen, can we turn off some lights?
Yeah, whatever you want.
Yep.
Yeah,
You want me to just do the full light screen?
yeah, I'm just thinking like if we could. Yeah,
There you
that's better.
Is that okay for you?
I think
That's
so.
perfect. Me, I
Thank
don't
you.
know if you want to direct it towards the audience more.
Yeah,
Turn the screen.
Yeah.
yeah, can somebody hit it with their head?
Like pull it out and then.
There you go.
So they can see it.
Not too far.
That might be good.
Yeah, not. We want to be able to.
Well,
Well,
we've got it.
Nope,
Probably not the same thing.
Yeah.
School through.
not in front of me, no.
Okay,
Halfway.
Matt, you see it?
Happy medium?
That's good.
Okay.
Okay, happy meeting.
Okay, does Mr. Principe need to be sworn?
Yes, he does.
Yep. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Yep. Who's
You
gonna do
want
that?
me to do the swearing in? Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth will help you God?
I do.
Please state your name, spell for the record.
Yep, Thomas J. Principe III, Principe, registered professional engineer.
Okay, Mr. Principe, we're gonna have to share this microphone and make sure everybody can hear us, but I'd like you to start off by describing your occupation and a brief summary of your background in engineering.
Yes, so again, occupation, I am a registered professional engineer, specializing in civil engineering, so land and site development. We have offices in Tiverton, Narragansett, and Woonsocket. So our specialty is doing residential, commercial, and municipal land developments.
Okay, and how many years have you been doing that?
Close to 20 years.
And is that, do I understand correctly, that that includes projects of all sizes, both residential and commercial?
Correct, single site and major land developments is this.
Excuse me, and I'm sorry, but in order to keep things moving along, Mr. Principe has testified before this board many times.
Right.
Yeah.
They're familiar with him. My practice, and I advise all boards this, not to have any witness qualified as an expert. However, he can still give opinion testimony. So we can dispense with that because I think everybody here is familiar with Mr. Principe and his work.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go on. We've put up on the screen a copy of the site plans for this project. And just for the record, that we're not showing anything tonight that hasn't been submitted previously to the town as part of our submission package or our supplemental submission package. That preliminary plan submission set by Principe Engineering is exhibit number 5 to our submission. Mr. Principe, your firm prepared that plan.
Yes.
That set of plans, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and the first plan page up there is the site plan, and I realize that it may be difficult for people in the back to see, but could you just give us the lay of the land, north, south, east, and west, and what exactly we're looking at there?
Yeah, sure. I can give a brief description. You did a pretty good job kind of describing the project at the earlier this night, and I'll be very brief. So to the top of the page is north, to the bottom is south, right is east, left is west. So to the top of the page, we have our two 54 unit buildings. There are 2 separate pad sites. Each pad is 54 units each. And then to the south, which is the bottom of the page, we have those little squares that are representing single family dwellings. And those are 12 separate single family dwelling residential parcels. Bisected by that in between the two is what was referenced earlier this night as Dallas Avenue, which is a public right of way, which is going to bisect this property off of Kinnicut Ave and then connect down to Denver Ave. Again, this was a plan that has evolved over the years based on a lot of correspondence with other consulting engineers, TRC meetings, fire departments, and whatnot. So we do have a connection from each property to the Kinnicut and Denver Avenue.
Is Dallas Avenue a approved road in town?
Dallas Avenue,
Yeah.
you can answer that.
Well, to our understanding, and Mr. Principe, correct me if I'm wrong, Dallas Avenue is a private right of way that we're proposing to enlarge to 40-foot right of way, correct?
Correct, public.
And it's
So who
proposed to
there
be
is
a public
responsible for
road.
that right of way?
It's a right of way now. We're proposing it to be a
Proposed
public
public.
road.
Has the town accepted it as a public road?
That's correct. And we are
Are you-
following-
We're proposing it.
Public
We're not
road?
saying it's been accepted. That's why we're here.
My understanding of Dallas Avenue is that it's a dedicated right of way
correct.
that has not been accepted by the town.
Yeah, that's
But it's gonna
private.
be utilized for this application, correct?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I mean, we have the right to use it and we propose to develop it to the town standards for a public road. So let's talk first about, by the way, the former reservoir area is off to the west, correct?
That's correct.
And so that area between where what used to be the reservoir and the two large apartment buildings and parking area that we see, what's going on in that area under the proposed plan?
No, there's nothing going on in that area. That's all wetlands and buffer and open space for the project.
And is this the site plan that was presented to and approved by DEM?
That's correct. Yes.
And that included stormwater controls that are also listed on and provided for and detailed on separate pages of this same
That's
plan.
correct. It's not shown on this sheet, but there's some outlines here that you can kind of see off to the west. Again, I have Karen Beck here from my office that can talk in more detail on the drainage and the landscape side of things. But again, everything that's shown here on this screen that the board has for the packet has been reviewed in detail by the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. And we have the approval in hand for the stormwater design for the project.
What are your plans for mosquito control?
Mosquito control. DEM doesn't regulate mosquito control on the stormwater policies. So we submitted for stormwater for water quality.
And did you follow all of the DEM stormwater manual practices for the
That's correct.
stormwater design?
We did not ask for any sort of relief waivers or variances with the Department of Environmental Management. Everything is 100% compliant with their regulations.
And that DEM approval that we provided as Exhibit 17 was dated May 2nd, 2024, correct?
That's correct.
And it also included an insignificant alteration permit related to wetlands, correct?
Correct.
What's that all about?
So again, I mean, they review it for wetlands and stormwater. So there's two different departments that review it. They have the biologists that go out to the site. And again, Karen Beck from my office is also a biologist that can speak a little bit more detail on that. But again, there's different departments within the Department of Environmental Management. So we have a stormwater permit and a wetlands permit itself, because they have to verify the wetlands that are shown on this property off to the left side, which is the west. They have little squares and flag numbers. It's kind of an odd shaped geometric configuration you kind of see on the screen. We had a registered biologist obviously initially flag that, but we have to submit applications up to the state. Again, they don't take our word for it, but we have to have a professional do it. And then the state professionals come down to verify the flags, confirm or move or alter them. And then again, that's one department. And then the other department are the RIPD's stormwater permit, because we're disturbing more than an acre. So that gets a RIPD's permit. And then those engineers review all the calculations, the stormwater management policy, groundwater quality, recharge, and all of those criteria that we need to follow as part of this permit process. So there's two different departments that review that, and we have those two permits in hand.
Okay, and those permits would not have been issued if you hadn't followed all of those DEM requirements for the engineering, the test hole results, the proposals, the estimates of the water flow, and so forth. And with respect to drainage specifically, what is the design standard that DEM requires in terms of how you have to manage stormwater from the property and how you can increase existing stormwater?
So yeah, it's like a bird's eye view of it, just on layman's terms. It's a comparison of pre and post construction flows, right? So they don't want to increase post construction for up to 100-year storm event. So mitigate those storm flows. So for instance, again, if this site was all paved and we're doing this development, there wouldn't be any sort of increase in that stormwater runoff. But we all do know that it's been farmed. There's no impervious on the site, very little impervious. So those are part of the calculations in pre. So for post, we have to collect that 100-year storm event for post development. And to just to further your point, again, for all the roofs, the runoff, the parking and everything, all of that calculation was completed, submitted to the state, reviewed, accepted, and that's all mitigated in multiple BMPs, they call it, best management practices, all those different stormwater systems that we have throughout the site. It's not just goes to one system. it goes to multiple systems.
Okay, and so there can't be under post-development conditions on a 100-year storm, a major storm event, an increase in the rate or volume of stormwater
Correct.
going off of the
Off the
property.
site, correct.
And that's the standard you had to engineer to, and that you accomplished with the permits that was secured, correct?
Correct.
Right now, there were a couple of different maps and filings associated with the DEM permits that we provided to the town as part of this submission. I don't need you to go into great detail about that, but so that the board knows, I'll provide the numbers in the exhibit package. And I'd like you just to describe what type of information someone interested in reviewing those items would find in there. Okay,
Yeah.
and why it's important.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And the first one is Exhibit 18, the pre-development and post-development watershed maps.
Yeah, again, that's actually exactly to my point is, that's part of the analysis. So when an engineer looks at a property and has to determine what is that pre versus post mitigational measure that's needs to be implemented, those are watershed maps, and that's all based on the topography. So basically, where's the water flowing? So I think of it, my professor used to say, if it's a glass parking lot, right? And you pour a bucket of water, where's it going? So we split the site into different types of watersheds. Some sites are more complex than others. This one was fairly straightforward. There's a high point kind of going down the center of the page that, flows east and flows west. So we have kind of some sort of high point that splits the site too. So it's not that complex when you're comparing the watersheds, but that's the first step in doing the engineering process. So it's part of the hydraulic report that we prepared and submitted to the state.
And Exhibit 19
Yep.
is the best management practice or BMP map and plan
Sure.
stormwater.
So I just mentioned that earlier, actually best management practice. So BMP is just a fancy word for the drainage types of systems. So based on the conditions on the property, the soil testing that we conducted previously, the water table elevations, that gives the information to the engineer in our office on what kind of options we have for BMP, best management practice. So that's what that means. And it goes through in detail in that report. I don't have the report on me on what types of BMPs we chose. But again, they were all reviewed and approved by the state of Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management.
And those BMPs would be shown in that document.
Absolutely,
correct?
yes.
The next one is a drainage analysis and calculations as revised March 6th, 2024. What's that?
Yeah, so that's all the hard engineering. Once you have all the watershed maps, the survey, the testing, and you choose your BMPs, those are all the actual hard calculations and the comparison. Should be a chart in there that compares pre versus post for each storm event.
And then there's a long-term stormwater operation and maintenance
Excuse me,
plan.
just to, hope this is a quick question.
Sure.
That, attachment 20 drainage analysis, references, the 1 year, 10-year and 100-year storm events. How many 100-year storm events have we had in the past 10 years that you're aware of in Rhode Island?
Yeah, no, I know where you're going with that. I understand. I don't think I can answer that right now. All I can say is that is the rules and regulations that were given by the state to design off of.
Thank you.
Well, I understand.
Okay, I think there's one more, the soil erosion and sediment control plan,
Sure. Yeah, that's part of the,
Exhibit 22.
anytime you have disturbance more than an acre, that they want a soil erosion and sedimentation control plan. And this is just mainly for construction, to making sure that we're protecting our downstream wetlands and also mitigating, dust control. It holds the contractor accountable. So, prior to start of construction, the contractor has to sign an agreement with the state. They have to have somebody out there doing inspections. Every rain event that we have, I believe more than in 1 inch, there has to be an inspection that's completed and sent to the state. And you have to call on a start of construction with the state. So the state's open to an inspection at any time. And you're supposed to keep track of all of your soil erosion and sedimentation control measures on site throughout the construction process. So if there's any issues, not only the town, but the state's involved once they start construction.
I think I skipped over 21, the long-term operation and maintenance plan.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with any engineering BMP is maintenance. So if it's not properly maintained, it's not going to work. So the Department of Environmental Management requires a recorded operation and maintenance agreement for these drainage systems.
Okay, now I want to ask you a little bit about the water issue and recognizing that someone from Mr. Anino's firm, the architect, and someone from the Zaid firm are present tonight to deal more specifically with these issues. Have you personally been involved in the engineering associated with the water connection issue?
Yeah, we have been involved in all the discussions and discussions with Zaid's office and the architect's office, Bristol County Water and such. Yeah.
Okay, and to your knowledge, as the matter stands today, is there any issue whether or not there's adequate water pressure and volume being proposed to be provided by Bristol County Water Authority, consistent with the two will serve letters that they provided, the most recent one of which was within the last few days, correct?
Correct, that's correct. Yeah, no, I don't see any issues with the water availability.
Now, how about sewer? You've been associated with that issue from the outset, have you not?
Absolutely. That's been a very extensive analysis and I could jump right into it. Again, just, Bill had mentioned earlier tonight about the sewer issue and we call it an issue because this project's been going on for so long. So the sewer issue is, again, they had called the bottleneck, right? So as the term bottleneck was used, there was a consultant, Woodard and Curran, we worked with that was, oh, sorry. I'm talking, my apologies. So, yep. So again, so just backtracking, the sewer issue, again, it was brought up early on in the project, right? So we want to make sure we have adequate utilities to serve this project. That's one of the biggest things as an engineer and a town and responsible way to understand if this project is suitable. Can we put this project at this particular location? And again, given just my experience and all the projects that we work on, we deal with some significant issues that we try to make work. And early on, we didn't see any sort of water issues or sewer issues. But again, when a town, addresses or thinks there's an issue, we absolutely vet it. We analyze it. We bring everybody together. We try to figure it out, right? So we worked with Woodard and Curran to analyze the bottleneck effect that they were saying could be an issue for this project. We have sewer capacity and a sewer main on Denver Ave that we're tying into. So it's not at the site. Their initial issue was at the Medicom Avenue bottleneck effect. So, a mile away on the site. So what we, again, agreed to is there was, again, as engineers, we all have calculations and, we kind of calced it out, figured out that it could potentially be an issue. But one thing I just kind of want to fast forward is there was a significant correspondence and significant time and effort on Principi Engineering's part, the town's part, Woodard and Curran's part, our client's part, to try to figure out this issue. There's a letter that I just kind of want to briefly just read through, which Mr. Landry kind of touched upon, where I personally had wrote from Principi Engineering on March 2024 to Dave Kamiga at the sewer department, which is subsequent to all of the flow testing that we did. So once we did the calculations, we actually went out and did flow testing. And as Mr. Landry stated earlier tonight, we did the flow testing for 3 months. Usually you do it for a few weeks or a month. We said, let's leave it in there. We had a police detail. We had a shut down portion of Medicom. We had DPW there. We installed the flow meters and we did it during the wet season because in sewer terms, you're worried about I&I, inflow and infiltration. So you don't do it in June, July, and August because you don't really get an idea because our sewer infrastructure is older. So not only the actual flow of everybody flushing the toilet, showering, but those inflows of rain and surface water. So this was done in the wet season and we had a couple of events. We actually had an event on December 23rd of 2020 it looks like in the letter, that had a significant 2-inch rain event. And again, that's in the middle of the winter. And what the flow meter verified is that that capacity of that 15-inch main that they thought was a bottleneck was only reached 33% to 46% capacity within those 90 days. So again, we just submitted the data. I put a cover letter together, and I believe that's submitted as part of the package, because this was a very important piece, because if there was an issue, we would address it. We would, again, be responsible and put it as part of our design to what size it had to be. But that was something that we really kind of honed in on, because they were saying it was a big issue. And from a calculation standpoint of view, we could see that there could potentially be an issue. But I just want to make it clear that, you know, again, we put flow meters in and we said, let's just see if it's actually an issue. So it didn't even reach half the depth of the 15-inch pipe. Basically, it was mostly at 33% when it was flowing full. Most of the time, it was only flowing about an inch, inch and a half.
Okay, was the initial guesstimate that there might be whether it's 1,400 gallons a minute, I think it was.
Yep.
Whether that was in fact the actual flow through that pipe?
That's correct. Yeah, that's what was the calculated flow. Theoretical flow, which is the calculation.
So
Correct.
if you were to accept that as the theoretical flow, the actual flow results under all of those different conditions for such a long period of time only got to 30 or 40% of that number, correct?
Correct.
Could that 1,400 have accurately assessed the existing flow through that 15-inch pipe?
No, the 1,400 gallons per minute is way undersized, way undervalued. Correct. So the flow on that is more than double of what was actually calculated, basically.
So that letter, which, by the way, just for the record, is part of Exhibit 25, the sewer-related letters. That was a letter written to the current operator of the sewer plant years after all of that work had been done. That was all done at the
That's correct.
master plan.
That's correct.
stage,
That's correct. This letter is dated March of 2024. So,
And did you ever get a response to that letter?
unfortunately not.
And there were multiple requests right up until today over the last,
Probably 22 requests from our office.
over the
and-
last year.
No feedback at all from that office.
All right, did Woodard and Curran, the engineers you worked hand in hand with to carry out this testing, did they ever challenge or disagree with the conclusions you reached?
No, so they challenged us with the calculations. There was challenges back and forth, and that's when we decided to just go to the flow meter and actually see what it can actually handle. And then after the results of flow metering, we never heard back from them.
So nobody's, to your knowledge, no engineer in behalf of the town or anyone, any other engineer for that matter, has challenged the issues related to that possible bottleneck,
No,
and including any engineering review that was done by Fuss and O'Neill over the last couple of months. They didn't touch that issue.
that's correct. We have a full review from the town's engineer, Fuss and O'Neill, and that was not part of their review.
Just out of curiosity, so we've established that in a 2-inch rain, 40% capacity on your 15-inch line, max from the read-ins, 1,400 gallons per minute. What happens after construction's on the development zone? Is there any impact, or do we now go to 50? I mean, I just don't know. So
Yeah, well,
Maybe
again, I mean,
provide some
it's a
like that.
main line, right? So I don't have those numbers,
okay,
but we did look at that effect, right? So if you think about Medicom Avenue, I mean, there's how many houses? I don't even have a number, but let's just say there's hundreds of houses and businesses that are tied into that.
Yeah.
So our development from a percentage standpoint of view is probably less than 5%.
well, you wouldn't be it's not related to the 24-inch main, but more of that 15-inch.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, the 15-inch is the main
Yeah.
collector.
From going to Medicom, right?
It's in Medicom.
Oh, that
15
is-
inches in Medicom. Yes,
Oh, so the larger one
absolutely.
goes
For
in-
some reason, Patterson intersects with Medicom. So
Yep.
as you go up Patterson, there's a section of 24-inch sewer line that comes into a 15-inch sewer line. And it's mind-boggling from an engineering standpoint of view. I would joke and say, well, maybe they just had extra 24-inch pipe and they just used that. Because 24-inch sewer line, we talk about volume, I mean, coming out of Patterson Pump Station, there's just, that'll never fill up or even come
Okay.
close to be even at capacity. So again, the bottleneck, they say, came from a 24-inch to a 15-inch. And again, as an engineer, you don't go down. So I understand the issue. So we fully vetted it, reviewed it. But to your point, again, we're such a small percentage because we're not just talking about the sewer line at the site too. So we got to talk about, we can look at it like the broad view of bird's eye view of the whole town and all those businesses along Medicom and all those residences pump up to Medicom and flow down and through. It's flowing north. So we did look at that for a little while. I don't have exact numbers, but we understand that it's not even going to be at half 50%.
Out of curiosity, what was your method of measurement?
I'm sorry.
What was your method of measurement?
So there's these flow meters that we had. EJP was a company that was subcontracted to install these flow
They
meters.
use pitot tubes or magnetic resonance?
Actually, I'm not sure. I don't have an answer to that, but I can get that for you. It was done a very long time ago.
By the way, I don't want to get too deeply into this, but I spoke earlier about the issue of measuring the total sewer capacity in the town and how it relates to this particular project. Are you aware of any limitations? I know you do a lot of work in this area, but any limitations on other projects, residential or commercial, big or small, where there's ever been a suggestion that there isn't enough sewer capacity in the town generally?
No, I've never received that correspondence.
How about tourist the mills? Said, how about tourist the mills? That was a problem.
I wasn't involved in that project. No. I'm just saying personally, I haven't.
So you're not aware of any, like,
No.
we're not down to 1%. Is this project like 1% of the total,
Oh, when you talk townwide, yeah, less than 1%.
less than 1%?
Well, yeah.
So you ever heard any suggestion that the town is at like 99% of its sewer capacity?
I have not.
And nothing's been presented to that effect in any of the.
I don't have any
engineering
correspondence
studies.
of that nature. No. No.
Okay. I mentioned the turning radius issue. Do you recall that that was addressed by your office and the fire chief to his satisfaction with his sign off being part of Exhibit 21?
That's correct. Yes, we corresponded with Chief Souza and he reviewed all of that and accepted it.
And could you address your understanding of what used to be the Kickamuit Reservoir and the status of that area as a reservoir?
Yeah, and again, obviously we knew when we first started, there was a Kickamuit Reservoir Overlay District that was in effect when that was a drinking water reservoir. But the dam has since been demolished and it's now brackish. So again, I know the policy is still in effect, but the actual drinking water reservoir is no longer a drinking water reservoir. But to your point, also DEM did review all of those items once we got our permit last year.
Including the water quality issue?
Correct.
Entering that body
Correct.
of water?
That's what their review is, water quality as well.
Okay, let me just ask you this, based on your work over the years on this project, your experience, and the review process before our IDM and the other considerations you described, do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of certainty within your profession as to whether this project would present a significant adverse material environmental effect or a serious adverse health, safety, or welfare effect in terms of any of the issues you've discussed, stormwater, wetlands, the sewer utility availability, and the water availability issue.
No, I do not.
I believe that's all I have right now. This witness.
You're closing in on your 2 hours. How much time do you think you're going to need beyond that?
I don't know. We'll finish within the 2 hours, but we'll make our best effort to do that. I think the remaining witnesses will be a little shorter.
Can we ask, Ms. Tangney if she needs a little break? Yeah, she's been going at it for a long time.
Okay, so let's go for a 5-minute break, 10, 12.
Cindy, how much time do you need? 5 minutes.
Great.
Which I was, is there a bottle?
Okay.
15 minutes, so.
I just wanna make sure. Yeah, that's for-
Yeah. That's not.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, let me find out. I'm okay with that. Proceed ahead, Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to call Karen Beck.
Uh,
He's coming. Okay.
And ask that she be sworn.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
My name is Karen Beck, B as in boy, E-C-K.
Okay, Ms. Beck, I'm going to ask you to concisely describe your occupation and your background as an engineer,
Actually not.
your background at Principi Engineering.
I am a registered landscape architect. I have been practicing this profession for over 40 years. I spent 3 years at the Rhode Island Department of Transportation. I spent 33 years at Commonwealth Engineers and Consultants, Inc. out of Providence, Rhode Island, and I have now been at Principi Engineering for 4 years. My background is predominantly in landscape architecture, but also as a wetlands biologist, which I've been practicing for those 40 years, as well as a permitting specialist. So I make all of the submissions, did it for RIDOT, did it for Commonwealth, and have now done it for Principi to the Department of Environmental Management and Coastal Resources Management Council, et cetera, in both Rhode Island and Massachusetts.
Without going through the whole thing in the interest of time, in terms of the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management issues, the biology issues, the ecological issues, and the other issues that Mr. Principi described, are you in agreement with the presentation that he made on those issues?
Yes.
Let's go to something he didn't discuss. You were involved in analyzing certain waivers that are open at this stage of the proceedings, correct?
That's correct.
And one of them was the parking lot requirements for islands in relation to the number of parking spots, correct?
Correct.
And is there an issue of practicability and infeasibility that has come up with respect to the proposed design in that regard and the the local ordinance requirement?
Yeah, so the way that the ordinance is written, it indicates that you should have one island, in other words, a non-paved surface island for every 8 paved spaces. And the goal for that is twofold. One is to have approximately 10% interior landscaping. They're trying to break up a parking lot so you don't have what's called a sea of asphalt. So that each island, if you had one every 8 spaces, you would have a tree in that island and maybe some grass or some other landscaping, et cetera. The goal for that is to reduce heat island effect, so that the trees cover some of the asphalt to make sure that it's less hot cumulatively in a parking lot. And that's usually required, quite frankly, when you have a parking lot in a commercial development where you've got a very large parking lot and you've got stacks and rows of parking consistently through the parking lot. In this particular instance, quite frankly, we don't have those rows of parking that are not interrupted by long islands or landscaping or adjacent landscaped areas. So we felt, quite frankly, since this is a residential project, that it would be more beneficial, since we do have landscaping surrounding this parking lot and sporadically throughout it, to take those islands, which quite frankly, other than the fact that there's a tree in it and it helps with heat island effect, it has no real use for a residential project. What we did instead was to take those extra islands, if you will, and consolidate it into a large landscaped area that then allowed us to have bocce court and a gazebo and a bus shelter and picnic benches and picnic tables and those sorts of things in that area. And quite frankly, we exceed, if we're looking for that 10% interior landscaping goal with those islands, we exceed it significantly. We're at 45% interior landscaping as a result of consolidating those islands and putting them all together, as opposed to worrying about having one tree every 8 spaces. We do have the required number of parking spaces. It's 1.5 spaces per unit. But that only really accounts for one person in the house, maybe two people in the unit, doesn't account for visitors and those sorts of things. So we did add to the parking to make sure that visitors are welcome, et cetera, so that they can also be parking in this parking lot without there being a problem with taking a resident space or something like that. And we do have the required number of ADA spaces.
And so is that a practicability, infeasibility issue there where you've got a superior design such that literal compliance would result in a worse plan than what's been presented?
That's correct.
Is that a matter of convenience?
Absolutely not. We felt that it was a better plan to have, again, a larger landscaped area.
Yeah, but that's all on the outside of the perimeter, correct?
No, it's not. There's actually a central landscape area in front of one of the 54 unit buildings and adjacent to the second 54 unit building. That's not perimeter landscaping. We've got additional perimeter landscaping all through the site. We've got screening between the residential adjacent properties, screening between the single-family residential lots. We take care of all of that on the perimeter, and that's separate and distinct from this interior landscape requirement.
So if you had to maintain that 8 parking places and an island, how much would that affect you?
Well, we have 20 extra spaces. We could lose those 20 extra spaces. But again, we feel that
Then
it's,
you'd have to come up with them someplace else.
no, again, we
No.
have extra spaces. But
So if you get extra spaces, why not just meet the code?
because we wanted to make sure that we had visitor parking, which is not required, but we feel is necessary. So that, we took that into
If you-
account.
That's,
And
if
again,
you take that into account, it means you don't have enough parking spaces.
No, we got plenty of parking spaces. The current regulations require one per unit,
One and a
one
half.
per unit. No,
One and a
no,
half.
Current state regulations for comp permits is one per unit. So we have excessive number of parking spaces. That's not the issue. If you want to take away those parking spaces and have this issue addressed in an even better way than it's addressed, we
Well, the thing is, I'm looking at you doing away with a number of trees.
The question's been asked and answered. You can address that later on.
Okay.
I think it's appropriate to have the full presentation made.
Go right ahead.
The next waiver is the street trees along the street at certain distance intervals. What's the impracticability or infeasibility of literal compliance with that issue?
the town's regulation states that street trees should be spaced between 50 feet and 75 feet. The lots on this, the single family lots on this property have 90 feet of frontage. Within that 90 feet of frontage, you have to have a driveway. You have to have a sewer line connection. You have to have a water line connection, and the gas line runs in the right of way along the street edge. I cannot, as a landscape architect, plant over a underground utility. I also have to pay attention to if there's an overhead utility, I have to be concerned with the size of the trees, because otherwise, and I'm sure you've seen it here in the town of Bristol with the older trees, they start pruning the middle of the tree out as it gets bigger. And the electric company doesn't appreciate having branches interfering with their electrical lines. But if you have a 90-foot lot, you take out 10 feet for the driveway. And then you have to have 10 feet between your sewer line and your water line. And I can't plant in that 10 feet. I can't plant at least another 5 feet on either side of the water line and the sewer line. That takes out another 20 feet. So that gives me 60 feet to plant a tree, basically. And that puts us within the 50 to 75. But again, I've got these 90-foot lots stacked up against one another. So basically, right now, we are proposing 1 tree per every 90 feet or 1 tree per lot. So it does not meet the 50 to 75, but I'm trying to make sure that I do not have issues later on in time with planting a tree over a utility or having issues with the maintenance of those trees. So again, it's from a health perspective on the trees, but also in terms of the reasonable planting distance. If we had larger lots, that would be something different. But in this particular instance, per the regulations, they only have 90 feet of frontage.
Right. And is the landscaping program for street trees as proposed generally consistent with the surrounding neighborhoods for the single-family homes?
I don't believe that there are technically any street trees. There is remnants of
So-
old farmland, there's remnants of creeping of the woodlands for the wetland and things like that. The surrounding streets don't have sidewalks. This is a more, it's an older neighborhood that doesn't have the typical street tree format that is found in the rest of the town.
Okay, so it would be an upgrade from what's generally found in the surrounding area.
Yes, and we've picked a mix of native trees and non-native trees to make sure that we're not planting the same trees next to one another. If you had, ash borer problems, if you had elm problems, you're not going to lose all the trees in the length. So we paid attention to flowering season, color in the fall, how big it gets, the fact that it's not next to another tree that could also have the same disease. Those sorts of things have all been paid attention to in terms of the design of the project. And we've got not only the street trees along the single family residences, but also on the opposite side where the multifamily residential properties are as well.
Let me ask you about the third and final waiver, the bituminous Cape Cod berm as opposed to street curbing. What's the impracticability, infeasibility of that particular requirement?
It's a combination of items. Cape Cod berm, which is an asphalt berm, as opposed to a concrete curb or a granite curb, functions predominantly the same. It is used when you've got a crown street to make sure that the water flows along the edge of the roadway and then does not disperse onto private property on either side. So this is not a project, I think, similar to some of the other streets in the neighborhood that do not have curbing at all. And so what happens is if the road is bermed the way it's supposed to, then the flow just goes off the edge of the roadway and into the adjacent properties. We are proposing to be consistent with the town's regulations in terms of having curbing to make sure that we control the stormwater, direct it to catch basins, et cetera, and to these water quality basins that we've proposed. But there is definitely a much higher expense associated with concrete curbing and granite curbing. And as this is a low and moderate income housing project, we are requesting a waiver from being required to install concrete or granite curbing and install berm instead.
Is that consistent for both the housing units and the apartment units? Or is there an ability to have the same curbing in the housing units that are required in any other housing development, considering only 25% of them, which is 3 units, is affordable? So
Well, the curbing is only associated with the street. And that runs between the multifamily and the single family unit. So if you had Cape Cod berm on one side of the road, you would be having something completely, totally different on the other side of the road. You could do that, but
For the cost effective side of it, what would be the increase in cost if you did go with the concrete or granite berm?
I don't have that answer, but I could get it for you.
Okay, just if that's part of the argument.
That was the argument, yeah, that it was too
If-
expensive, but we don't know how expensive.
If
it
your,
is to compare.
if your argument's gonna be it's expensive, I'd just like to know more details of how much more expensive is it gonna be? Or are we just assuming that,
No, from other projects, we do know for, is it twice the cost or 3 times the cost or 4 times the
Yeah.
cost? I can't give you that number, but we do know definitively that it's much more expensive for concrete and granite than it is to Cape Cod berm, but I can get you the exact number between the two.
thank you.
Who's gonna maintain the Cape Cod berm? They're
Yeah.
notorious for getting knocked over by snowplows.
Well, I can answer that. If this road is to be accepted by the town, then it would be the town's responsibility.
Is there anything unusual about Cape Cod berms in residential developments in Rhode Island?
Absolutely. It's very common in the state.
I'm gonna ask you now about the engineering review letter that was provided by Boston O'Neill in behalf of the town on May 14th, 2025. You're familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay, and so that I can keep my preference would be to go through this item by item and have you provide a response. But in the interest of time and trying to, expedite things and stay as close as possible to trying to complete this sooner rather than later, I'm gonna have you look at the first page of that memorandum. And when we get down to the zoning bylaws section on page 3, you see that on top, page 3 of the report? Zoning bylaws.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of things that they're proposing to be included as conditions to any approval, including technical changes to the proposed design. And I want to just confirm with you that as to virtually all of these, there is not an objection to those proposals, okay? So let's start with the 1, 2, and 3 under the zoning bylaws. We don't have any problem with providing stop sign locations and details, as well as stop bars and pavement marking details, correct?
No problem.
As part of the final plan. Okay, and then the off parking requirements, the layout details for the spaces and handicap spaces,
We can provide those, yes.
okay? And with respect to the sign regulations, there be a note on the plans that project signage be submitted to the planning department for administrative approval prior to the issuance of the building permit, correct?
No problem.
And then they want you to show certain things on sheets 2 and 4 of the engineering plans, including spot grades. There's a question on test pit locations. We're in agreement that those conditions are perfectly acceptable, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and the test pit locations were not shown on the plan because none of them, there were extra test pits and they weren't relevant to the analysis or something to that effect.
correct.
And on sheet 4, the grading and utility plans, the notes on the plans about the poly PVC materials to be used, a note on the plan about sanitary manholes, et cetera. A note on the plan for call outs for roof drain and downspouts, the proposed conditions requiring that. And also for the final plan submission showing the top of the embankments and several other things, the tops and bottoms, curbs, emergency overflow, accessible routes from parking spaces. We have no objection to any of those additional notes being made on the final plan, correct?
No,
Same thing on the next page, the top and bottom of retaining walls, call outs for culverts and riprap. And the connection of the water line with the existing line on Kennecott Avenue, those details.
no problem.
Yeah, and sidewalk, additional sidewalk detail, sheet 5.
No problem.
And the same thing with the landscape plan, technical details and notes to be added to the final plan.
Actually, that's interesting. Apparently the review engineer was not provided the lighting plan, although we did provide it to the town.
Yeah.
So, we already have provided that information to them.
Okay, and that was included in our package as an exhibit. Sheet 7, soil erosion, runoff, soil sediment
I'm sorry,
control.
1 second. There were items C and D on the landscape plan.
Yeah, I'm
screening.
sorry. All of them are okay on the landscape plan. I meant to say A, B, C, and D, except for we already provided the lighting. plan.
Right, but the rest
Oh,
of them are
okay,
no
thank you.
problem.
Thank you.
Are you responsible for the lighting plan?
We are not, no, we had a sub-consultant do the lighting plan.
Sheet 7, A, B, C, D, and E, the soil erosion and sediment control, additional call outs that they're looking for on the final plan, all okay?
No problem.
Okay, same thing with on sheet 8, the details and the order of procedure, sheet 8A, no problem.
No problem.
Okay. And including in the clarification that the filter media shall not be installed in a BMP until the sediment trap is being converted to a final BMP.
No
Note can
problem.
Be put to that effect. And then on sheet 9, A, B, C, and D, additional details on the bioretention devices and BMPs and the infiltration basin as provided there. That's no problem.
No
as well,
problem.
correct?
And specifically with regard to item C, recommendation that the embankment down gradient of the weirs be stabilized.
No problem.
Okay, so that's sheet 9. And 9 has a D2 that also applies to the infiltration basin. That's okay too, right?
Yes,
And then for sheet 8, on number 8, sheet 10, the details add what's the issue with the BCWA utility separation detail? Is there a BCWA regulation with respect to the separation of water utility lines from drainage structures?
no, the detail was not provided in the plan set. It is specific to separation distance between sewer and water lines, and that's a state standard as well. Although I probably shouldn't do this, but I would point out that the detail provided by BCWA is incorrect. It says it only needs to be 10 inches between a sewer line and a water line. It's supposed to be 10 feet.
So, but you're following at least the required standards, if not more. on
Yes, that is
issue.
correct.
And on sheet 11, A, B, C, and D, additional notes to the plan with respect to the water and sewer department. Those are okay as well,
Yes,
including adding a fence detail and a guardrail detail.
yes,
And then sheet 12, details
Hmm.
to revise the note to change comparable sand with a specific ASTM standard.
C33, yes.
Standard. And then on the post-construction stormwater control, there's no objection to providing a stormwater facility maintenance agreement. Well, there is a sample that's provided as part of, it notes that there's a sample provided as part of the long-term operation and maintenance plan that Mr. Principe testified about. But then it says that since there are 3 BMPs proposed in a right-of-way, Fuss O'Neill recommends a condition that there be a final maintenance agreement submitted to the town for review, approval, and execution.
That's always required anyway. And the 3 units are all the same type of unit, so it has all the same long-term maintenance requirements. But as part of a preliminary and the submission to DEM, stormwater and RIPDs, we're only required to provide a sample maintenance agreement because it has to be worked out between the applicant and the town.
Okay, I think that may be all we have you. Okay, that's all I have. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of certainty within your profession as to whether there would be any significant adverse environmental or health safety impacts as a result of any of the engineering issues that you've discussed?
There will be no significant adverse or even minor adverse implications for public health, safety and welfare, environmental issues.
That's all I have. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'd like to call Mr. Bisco, and I'll limit him to 30 seconds, if that's okay. Mike. Could you state your name and background?
Michael Bisco.
Please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Michael Bisco, Biscko,
And what's the nature of your business and expertise, Mr. Bisco?
heavy civil construction.
And does that include utility, construction and, sidewalk and curbing
Yes,
construction? How long have you been involved in that?
20 years.
And you're one of the, you're the applicant for this project,
Correct.
correct? You're part of the team of the Last Ever Realty, correct?
Correct.
And you've been doing residential subdivisions on small and large scale for decades, correct?
Correct.
In this general area.
Yes,
Now, there was a question raised with respect to the difference between concrete and asphalt Cape Cod berms and the cost differential and practicability issues associated with that. Could you speak to that briefly, please?
the Cape Cod berm has less maintenance issues in the long term versus concrete due to the effects of salt with roadway winter maintenance. Also, as one of the members raised, it's not a raised asphalt berm, it's a tapered berm, so it minimizes the effect of being knocked over. The cost differential is in excess of $30 a foot.
Isn't the, I didn't think it was granite berms that are
Yes.
required, not concrete.
Granite's required, not concrete.
Then it's in excess of $50 a foot.
Right, but the maintenance issue on concrete, on granite curbs is less than the maintenance issues on Cape Cod berms, yes?
Correct.
So what are you talking about on a project scale approximately at an additional $50 a foot?
I don't know how many linear feet around here. $75,000 minimum.
And in your experience, is there anything unusual in Rhode Island municipalities and towns with Cape Cod berms as opposed to granite curbs?
Most towns are going with asphalt berm versus granite.
Right, that's all I have of Mr. Bisco. I'd like to call the representative from, let's see if we can do this with the representative from Zaid, since that might cover what we were gonna do with Mr. Anino. State your name for the record, please.
Ronald Cody.
Mr. Cody, you'll be sworn now.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yeah.
You stated your name, please spell it for the record.
Cody, C-O-T-E.
Okay, Mr. Cody, what's your occupation?
I'm a mechanical engineer at Zaid Engineering. Principal owner.
Okay, and has your office been involved in the capacity calculations for the water system for Settlers Green?
For the fire flow design, yes, we have.
Right, and you've worked in conjunction with whom on those issues?
Anino Incorporated directly.
And what background does your firm and you personally have for dealing with issues like water availability calculations?
We're fire protection and plumbing engineers, also mechanical, electrical, but this is very common for us to weigh in on the fire flow designs.
So
for
you
projects.
commonly work with entities like Bristol County Water Authority on
Similar, yep.
water availability. And you are aware that your firm, as part of the master plan application process in this project, provided an analysis of the required and anticipated water flow based on the design of the buildings, and determined a particular gallons per minute, I think was the calculation, and certain water pressure PSI readings, correct?
Correct.
And you determined that based on the project design and the materials that we utilized, that the project was well within the tolerances of Bristol County Water Authority expert opinion provided by PAR Engineering, correct?
Correct.
And do you recall that on Friday of last week, the fire chief question, an email was forwarded from the fire chief regarding a recent flow test and whether or not the results of those tests mean that the project no longer satisfies the volume and pressure requirements for domestic and fire flow service, but somehow those requirements are not met. You aware of that?
We've seen the email. Yeah.
Okay, and in response to that, and by the way, that email also had a caveat to it that asking whether there was a position that the water pressure is relevant to the actual required volume requirement,
Mhm.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and did your firm look at that issue between Friday and today to prepare a response to that question by the fire chief as to whether the standard is still met?
Yes. Yeah, we provided an updated letter based on the flow test that was done in March of this year.
Okay, and could you just describe for us, very succinctly, the
Excuse me, didn't we go through this once already?
Yes,
Well-
but he's going through with the expert.
Yeah, this is the actual fire safety engineer. And by the way, you work with the project architect, Anino. and
Yeah.
company, correct? And you're the fire experts.
Yeah.
And your opinion is on the NFPA standards and the compliance of the project with those standards.
Correct.
Go ahead, please.
So we did provide an updated letter based on the flow test that was done in March. The residual and the flow pressure, we extrapolated to what the minimum 20 PSI is required for the fire department's use of fire flow. And it exceeds the amount based on NFPA 1 requirements for the project. So from that standpoint, the development meets the satisfied fire flow demand.
And that's because you have to link the water pressure with the volume to get the actual.
Yeah, there's an equation for that type of thing that we could punch into the calculator and basically will give us that now.
And,
But-
and your office prepared a letter today in response to that inquiry on Friday. So your letter's dated June 23rd, 2025, and it includes that calculation and
Yep.
exactly what you described me that's responsive to the fire chief's
Yep.
concerns. And do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of certainty whether that June 23rd, 2025 analysis is correct? And whether there would be any, to your knowledge, adverse health, safety, or welfare impact represented by the fire demand for this project in relation to what PAR has determined is the available flow?
None at all. It exceeds the fire flow demand a lot. So it's not like we're on the edge. So we're comfortable with the findings.
So this
Excuse me, Mr.
information,
Landry, is the letter in the record?
it was just received this afternoon. I did provide it to the clerk when it came in this afternoon. This was in response to something I got from the planner on Friday from the fire chief.
I just want to know where the letter is because I'm not familiar with it.
I've got multiple copies of it to submit. It was submitted by email and I've got a paper copy of it for everybody. It's one page. Who would you like me to give the package to?
Alyssa. Thank you.
Did not receive this.
I sent it to you this afternoon. By email.
I'll have to double check my email because I don't have it on for the record.
Okay, I suggest you do.
Okay.
It was later this afternoon. This was something that we worked on all day today to try to respond to a question that was raised.
Right.
That's all I have. Thank you. I'd like to call the representative of Anino Architect. Could you state your full name for the record, please?
Eric Immonen.
Okay, and Eric, you're going to be sworn right now.
Yes, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And, spell your name for the record.
Imminent, Immonen.
And you're with Douglas and Nino Architects, correct?
That is correct.
What's your capacity within that firm?
I'm one of the project architects there.
And have you worked on this project virtually since inception?
Pretty much so, yes.
And are you familiar with the initial letter that was provided by Nino Architects on how the architectural features of the project, including the fact that there are two buildings, relate to the fire flow requirements for the building?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and that was a letter that was dated at the master plan stage of this proceeding that we've submitted as exhibit number 10. Has the Nino Architects updated that letter for purposes of this preliminary plan submission?
We have not, but we reviewed the contents of the letter to confirm that was still accurate.
All right, well, we received from your firm and provided it an updated letter.
Oh, you mean the February letter?
Yeah, the February.
Yes, we updated it in February.
February of this year, you updated it and then also made reference to the letter from Zaid Engineering that had
Yes.
previously
Sorry,
been
yes.
provided. And that all relates again to the types of buildings, the building materials, and how they relate to the National Fire Protection Association requirements.
Correct.
And your firm didn't rely entirely on your own information. You had confirmation by an outside fire safety engineer in the Zaid firm. for that,
Correct, yes.
And do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of certainty within your profession as to whether those letters your firm has provided as part of this record are accurate statements of how the architecture relates to the fire flow requirements under NFPA?
Yes, the
And
contents of
FPA.
those letters comply with the codes.
And that includes the fact that each building is evaluated as a separate building.
Because of
correct?
their separation distances.
And the separation distance were important to your analysis, correct?
Correct.
As well as the exterior cladding material to be used for the buildings, correct?
They didn't have a cladding requirement for their separation, but they do for other purposes.
Okay, but those, in any event, those standards are met to the best of your
Correct.
knowledge. And you can concur with the joint opinion that the representative from Zaid has provided in response to the question that the fire chief raised on Friday, correct?
Yes, I do.
That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I don't believe our presentation will be complete without being able to respond to whatever the abutters present, but to try to keep this to another few minutes or not much more than that, we'll call as our final witness tonight Todd Brayton of Bryant Traffic Engineering firm, and he'll describe the supplemental traffic analysis that his office provided. But again, we're not finished. I have sped it up from 45 to 78 RPMs here to try to get most of what we want to say in the record. But I do have a couple of additional documents to present. We don't have to go over them tonight, but we're not finished our presentation. We're finished most of it and are reserving for further presentation until after the abutters present. Mr. Brayton, could you state your name, please?
Todd Brayton.
Okay, Mr. Brayton sworn.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I help you God.
I do.
Please spell your name for the record.
Brayton, Brayton.
Hey, Mr. Brayton, your firm prepared two traffic reports at the time of the master plan submission on this project, correct?
Yes.
And those were previously provided. One is dated July 2019, which we submitted as Exhibit 13, and then updated in January of 2021, which we submitted as Exhibit 14, correct?
Yes.
And your firm has since, in response to suggestions by the towns, actually not in response to the town's suggestions, but on our own, you've updated the assumptions that were included in the initial traffic report, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and could you, and we've submitted your updated traffic report, which is dated it's exhibit number 16, and I think it was dated in March or April of this year.
February 2020.
February 2025 was submitted as part of our submission package. I'd like you in your own words to describe what the supplemental traffic impact analysis adds to the original reports in terms of analysis, and how that additional information affects, if at all, the conclusions and opinions that were reached in the initial two traffic.
Okay. Yeah, so the biggest thing that was different in this most recent traffic study is that we got more recent traffic counts. Because we had done the original counts several years ago. So with the passage of time, we got new counts. The development has largely stayed the same in terms of the units. There are some changes in terms of trip duration, but they're very similar. Then the biggest thing is the capacity analysis of the 3 intersections that we looked at as part of the traffic study with these new traffic counts, which were actually relatively similar to the ones that we had done previously back in 2019, is that there's no significant changes in capacity. There's very small increases in delay for vehicles at these intersections. And there's really no change in our conclusions from our original reports.
Okay, and that report, is that an opinion that you would register with the town based on reasonable probabilities in your capacity as a traffic expert?
Yes.
And could you just state briefly your background in traffic engineering?
I have a bachelor's degree and master's degree in civil and environmental engineering from URI. I have over 25 years of experience working on traffic studies like this, and I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Rhode Island.
And you've worked on dozens of projects
Yes.
similar to this for all kinds of customers, governmental entities as well as private developers, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and your traffic report deals with a couple of different categories. One is levels of service, and the other is safety issues. And could you address both of those briefly in terms of what the final conclusions were?
Yeah. Just a little more detail. So for the capacity analysis, so we did look at 3 intersections, 3 existing intersections and 1 proposed intersection. Those intersections are the intersection of Connecticut Avenue and Dallas Avenue, which is the new intersection that's being created at the site access driveway. The intersection of Connecticut Avenue and Denver Avenue, the intersection of Connecticut Avenue and Schoolhouse Road, and the intersection of Connecticut Avenue and Child Street. So our analysis was done at the peak hours, the AM and PM peak hours for the adjacent traffic. And our analysis indicates that there's no change in the level of service for all of the intersections, with the exception of 1 approach, the north.
Whoa, excuse me. Please don't do that.
So with the exception of the northbound approach of the Connecticut Avenue and Schoolhouse Road intersection, which changed from a level of service A to a level of service B with only a 0.2 seconds per vehicle increase in delay. Level of service B is still an acceptable level of service. And no level of service were less than level of service B for AM or PM for any of the intersections studied.
How many different levels of service are there?
So it goes from level of service A, which is the most favorable condition, to level of service of F, which is the least favorable. So A, B, C, D, E, F.
So A and B are highly favorable levels of service for residential development of this nature.
Yes.
residential neighborhoods.
For any intersection analysis, yes.
Does that mean that there aren't times which may not be peak hour at which cars back up at some area within the general area of this development?
I'm sure there probably are cases for whatever case, for whatever reason that there may be increased delays. Although, again, looking at our peaks, which was based on the traffic counts that were collected, that is the highest traffic volumes in our area.
Study area for your analysis, you put down counters and actually look at what the actual traffic is, correct?
Yes, we have most of the new counts is actually manually collected by people at intersections, counting cars as they're turning.
You
Yes.
took into consideration.
Yes, we did, there was a development that the town referenced on Child Street, so we did account for that traffic in our analysis.
Is that Penny Lane?
Yes, I think that's what
And
it's
that was a
called.
request that was made at the technical review committee level to make sure you're factoring in Penny Lane because it was a significant new development. Right?
Yes, that's correct.
And you also looked at safety issues with respect to traffic.
We looked at site distance at the proposed intersection, which is the Dallas Avenue intersection. So based on the speeds that vehicles are traveling on Connecticut Avenue, the site distance is met for AASHTO requirements, which is it's a policy on geometric design of highways and streets, and that provides guidance. Oh, I'm sorry, policy on geometric design of highways and streets, which provides recommendations for site distance at driveways and any intersection, and our driveway exceeds the requirements.
So do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of certainty within your profession for the reasons set forth in your earlier reports as updated by this one as to whether there's any significant adverse health, safety, or welfare issue associated with traffic volume or safety?
Yes, that's correct. There's none, yes.
Fussin O'Neill folks.
Did he say none? Zero?
Yes,
Yeah, he said none.
He said there was no zero adverse effect, 200 plus.
correct. Let's, again,
I just want it, it's perjury.
no, you have to, we can't,
Zero?
If we want to get out of here, we cannot have comments from the audience until we are called.
This is where.
I
I understand, wait a minute. Please,
Sorry,
Jenny.
I'm sorry.
I appreciate what you're saying, and you will get a chance, but this is not a discussion at this point. We've been here now 2.5 hours, well past, and I understand a level of frustration here.
Yeah, here's the thing.
Wait a minute, no,
let's
stop.
squash this.
Just stop. One person is talking, and that's me.
Excuse
So
me.
we're going to, yes, we're going to go on with the presentation.
And I'm going to say what I want to say as well.
It's fine. Say what you have to say, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, let me
Mr. Derrick
finish
can
what
say
I'm
he feels
saying.
afterwards, and then I want to address what the gentleman said.
Okay.
Right.
But what we want to do here is, and I know this is frustrating. It's frustrating for us. It's difficult to sit for 2.5 hours and listen to a long presentation. And I understand that. At the same time, we've got to have order here. And it's not a matter of, I understand your concerns as well, and you will have a chance to present those. Unfortunately, it will probably be at the next meeting because we have put a time limit on this meeting. And I apologize for that. I'm sorry, but that is the nature of the way that this is going to be handled. We're volunteers. We're not paid for this. And that is, we want though, and we will ensure that everyone gets a chance to speak. And that will be taken into consideration when we handle this problem, this application. Okay, Ashley?
So here's the thing. When it comes to traffic, this is a national thing. Everybody says that it doesn't impact. There's national data on it that says across the board that housing and residential development do not have a significant impact on vehicular traffic. It is a store or something else that is a completely different story. And so as much as I understand your concerns, because I live in the same neighborhood as you all do, and I have been in this same position as you all have, and silenced more than once on this panel, but just so you all know, there is national, international data that is going to tell you the same thing that this gentleman is saying. So as frustrated as you are, as frustrated as I get, unfortunately, you can look it up and see all the studies and reports across the world to say the same thing.
May I just say one thing?
Sure.
They're making their presentation. They're saying what they're saying. Now, this fellow is a traffic engineer. When the members of the public get to speak under the case of East Bay Community Development Corporation versus the town of Barrington, if you live in the neighborhood and you drive on the streets and you put on the record what you do when you drive on the streets, how many times you drive on the streets, what your experience is driving on the streets, that is competent evidence. Just the same as a traffic expert coming in. Let them say what they have to say, then you're going to get a chance. You're all going to get a chance to say what you have to say. And so long as you articulate the bases for what you're saying, that is competent evidence. It's not just the East Bay Community Development Corporation case. It's also Restivo versus Lynch. Okay, so you're going to get your chance to say, so long as you can articulate the bases for what you're saying in terms of traffic, that is competent evidence. And then you'll have your chance. And everybody here will have their chance. However, to get to that point, we've got to get through this presentation. Thank you. Thank you.
Just one more thing, Mr. Brady. The Fuss and O'Neill folks identified that the collection data that you provided indicates prevailing speeds at 35 to be higher than the actual posted speed limit of 25. Is that correct?
Yes,
Is that an unusual condition?
that is not unusual, no.
And then have you requested from the police department a crash history assessment to see if there's any unusual number of accidents in this particular area?
Yes, we have requested crash data for the area.
And do you expect to be able to provide that at the next hearing on this matter?
Yes,
But generally speaking, is this an area where there is a lot of pedestrian traffic on sidewalks?
well, based from our counts, there is not a lot of pedestrian traffic in the area.
Just for the record, when you count the traffic impacts, does the fact that there are 200 houses mean that all of those 200 houses are on the road at peak hours, much less the other hours of the day at the same time?
Yeah, drivers from each unit would not be on the road at the same time, certainly, no.
And do I understand correctly that traffic studies focused, first of all, identified the busiest traffic time of the day, the worst case scenario in the morning and the worst case scenario in the afternoon, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that these levels of service and delay that you've described are calculated based on that worst case scenario that the counts reveal for the AM peak and the PM peak, right?
Yes.
So.
I had a quick question actually before he goes,
What is
so when
it?
you say that there's zero safety impact on the traffic in the area, does that take into account pedestrian or bicycle traffic, or are we talking vehicular only?
So the study that we did so far is based on the sight distance. So based on that sight distance, it's for vehicles being able to see other vehicles.
So when you say safe, we're not talking about the safety of pedestrians walking along the bridge that's been redesigned, or any of those streets in that areas, or the effect on them from increased traffic. It's just vehicular.
Yes, primarily, yes, vehicular traffic, that's what it's based on, yes.
What was the duration of your study?
In terms of the length of the traffic counts, Yes. So we counted from 7 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the afternoon
Well, over what period of time?
for one weekday,
One day?
one day. Yeah. That's common practice.
That com-
Yes.
Sorry, what day? Just by curiosity, what day?
What day?
Day.
So it was, in this case, Tuesday, February 4th.
Here?
2025.
Was that a holiday?
No.
No, but I was asking because there is a considerable difference between a Tuesday traffic and Friday traffic, or people are home on Fridays.
That's all I have from Mr. Brayton right now, Mr. Chair. Again, we're reserving further presentation until the opposition presents their case. I also have a couple of documents that I could provide now, or I could provide after the meeting, one of which is an updated, further updated Bristol County Water Authority water availability certification that water is available. That was actually issued on June 16th. And therefore was not in our earlier presentation. And we also have the Rhode Island housing study of the current standing of each community under the Low and Income Housing Act, the number of units and where they stand in relation to the 10% that factors in the Section 8 vouchers. And this was issued 2 weeks ago. It's a very recent document. It's a public document. I'm sure it needs to be an exhibit, but I'd like to introduce both of these documents at this time as well.
Okay. Motion to accept those two documents as an exhibit.
As well as the earlier one.
Does that include the prior one that came in,
Oh,
the
oh,
June
sure.
23rd letter?
Yes, the. All
Okay.
three.
I'll make a motion.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
All right, and is Cindy gonna, are you gonna be able to give Cindy a copies of those for the purposes of the transcript?
Are we gonna get a copy? I haven't seen it.
There are multiple hard copies there.
So are we done?
For now, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We need to open the public hearing, correct?
Correct, but you have Mr. Ryan here. And I think you probably want to hear from him first before we get to public comment.
Okay, so we don't open up as a public
Well,
hearing?
yeah, we can take it one step at a time, I think. So,
No, I mean, I think it's important that we, not, if,
That's fine, open it up for the public hearing, but yeah.
Yeah, and he'll be the
represent-
that was gonna be
Yeah.
my suggestion. And that I am able to bring back my engineer who's here tonight and present my Horsley and Witten engineering report at the beginning of the next meeting.
okay,
Now, I have to put on the record who I represent.
well, let me just open it as a public hearing first. I'll make a motion to open this as a public hearing. Second, Blake, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And you
I
can-
represent the Warren Citizens for Appropriate Development Corporation, a Rhode Island nonprofit.
Does he need to be sworn in?
He does not because he's a lawyer and he's just making legal arguments.
Okay.
And I was gonna suggest many of the people in the audience are members of the nonprofit corporation. They're contributing members. And that's where I was gonna suggest that some of them had to leave already tonight. Some of them are elderly, and I was gonna ask the chairman if you'd entertain public comment And then I would proceed at the next meeting, whatever that is.
As the first speaker. Yes, I see no problem with that.
It's appropriate because so many exhibits came in tonight. Experts should be able to take a look at them. So I think that's appropriate.
Thank you. That's,
Thank you.
that.
Okay.
that's it.
The floor is open. If you can raise your hand if you'd like to speak or. And then step up. State your name and address.
My name is Michael Tren. I live at 7 Frank Court here in Warren. I've been at that address for over 21 years, actually over 24 years. Very nice area, lots of really nice houses. And I'm astounded every year when I get my tax assessment because it's a lot more than I paid for the house. And I have one of the smaller houses. So now you're going to drop what you're referring to as a project into our neighborhood. And it is a project. 2 buildings, 104 apartments. I grew up in Providence. That's a project. I wonder what it's going to do to our tax valuations. What's it going to do to our property values? What is it going to do to the town's take? How much are you going to lose? Is it going to be offset by the property taxes on this place? Now I have a couple of problems with the whole thing tonight. This has taken place in a complete vacuum without the addition of the 40 units of affordable housing that are going up in the field on the opposite side of Child Street. Not even considered. Also going to affect the sewer, going to affect the water, going to affect the traffic, everything that we talked about for 2.5 hours tonight. We need to start figuring some of that in. You need to figure that in. That's going up. It's already been approved, and it will impact the neighborhood just as negatively as this one will. And as far as your traffic study, one day in the middle of February, in the early part of February, does not constitute a study. That's all I have to say.
My name is Sam Pinero. I live at 5 Detroit Avenue. My last name is Pinero, spelled Pinheiro. Been at 5 Detroit for about 20 years. I hear all the engineers talking about these things. You realize engineers come up with theories. I'm a mechanic. I've been doing it for over 30 years. I see engineers and their theories and what we end up having to contend with daily. Nothing is going to actually happen. If this actually takes place, then you'll know if their theories are correct. And that is fact. I've been doing this for a long time. The traffic study, as we all know, is absolutely nonsense. I mean, complete. The amount of traffic has increased since we have lived there. And I find it very interesting. We talk about affordable housing. After the military, I got married and I grew up in Bristol. I also grew up in Barrington. Well, I'd like to bring my family back. I thought Bristol would be great. Barrington would be great. Can't afford it. Where can you afford? Warren. And they constantly say that, that we have no lower income housing, which is complete nonsense. My mom has been a real estate agent here for well over 50 years. She's a broker. She takes people to Warren. That's where they can afford East Bay. That's where she goes. And that's fact. I've listened to her on the phone my entire life. So I think everything that they're talking about with this giant project complex is ridiculous. I think based upon what she has told me, she's dealt with projects like this in the past. And sometimes they'll throw all this stuff in front of you, all these huge, when this first started, it was supposed to be, I believe, like 22 houses they wanted, something like that. So they got turned down on that. So they come back with this huge thing. And hopefully that gets turned down and the guy will literally get what he wants, which is the 22 houses or whatever. So he gets everybody riled up over a project and then he gets back what he wants. So let's see what happens. But I hope you guys drive through the area, check it out, see what it looks like, see what goes on in our community.
See the traffic for yourselves. See the kids playing in the street. I mean, I'm hoping to have grandkids soon playing in front of my house. But if this happens with the amount of traffic that's going to occur with another 200 plus cars in and out, I can't see kids playing in the street. That's all I have.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Barry Brown. I live at 133 Kickamuit Road, which is not an exact abutter, but I'm thinking about the people who live there and the lighting in the parking lot and how that will affect them when they look out their windows. I've written down like maybe 15 or 20 things. One of the things is that living on Kickamuit Road, I'm a recent Warrener. I've only lived here for 42 years. But I like to think of myself as a Warren. My wife was actually born and raised in this town. In front of our house, twice a day, in the morning and in the afternoon, 5 days a week, the traffic is backed up between Serpentine Road and Metacom Avenue. It goes down Serpentine Road on both sides. Sometimes there's people in the traffic for 10 minutes, their music is blaring, and sometimes we can't get out of our parking lot. Now, the notion, and the word that you used, and I thought your presentation was excellent, but the word he used was significantly adverse. So it may be adverse, but it may not be significantly adverse, and that's a very, very subjective term, significant. I don't know exactly what that means, but I want to say that the notion that a project of this size is not going to somehow impact that traffic twice a day on Kickamuit Road, that defies credulity, that could possibly happen with a couple hundred more cars. I am a strong advocate for housing in Rhode Island, for more housing in Warren. A project this size, if it was the 12 houses, I wouldn't be here right now, I'd be home. But the size of this project in a neighborhood, and my wife and I have been walking down Serpentine Road, down Kinnicut Road, and down Child Street for over 40 years. And the notion of that project without that impacting on our walk, so it's a very personal thing, it defies credulity that could possibly happen. So I'd like to see more housing, and I'd like to see that area be productive for the town. But I worry about the property value of the people who live there. And I wonder if there are other realtors who could maybe an estimate of what it would be like to try to sell your house on Kinnicut Avenue with that kind of a project in the neighborhood. I just don't know. And I also don't know how many people are gonna live. That's, you can't tell what the traffic is gonna be like unless you know how many people are gonna live there, number one, and number two, what their traffic patterns, what their traffic habits are. So you can come up with a traffic report based on some kind of but I don't think you can get an accurate, reading of that. So I'm really here in support of my neighbors who live in that area and whose houses I've been walking by for many, many years. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Mr. Brown, before you go. Sure. How often do you take walks with your wife on that street?
Oh boy, we used to do it a lot more than we do now. We used to do it every morning. And also if you go back and look at the Warren Times, what you'll see is that my wife and I started a cleanup in this town with members of the town council, 6 of the members of the town council. Maybe you don't remember that. We've been picking up garbage on Kickamuit on Serpentine Road for 20 years with black bags every single week with big black bags. And so I have something invested. The fact of what they've done to the Kiki is especially disturbing. It used to be a really beautiful thing to look at, and it's basically a mud pit now. So there's been a lot of degradation. Yeah.
When do you observe these traffic jams? On your walks?
No. The traffic jams are every morning. You can come take a ride down in the morning down Kickamuit Road, and you will see. I don't know, somewhere between. Yeah, between 7 and 9, and then in the afternoon.
Okay.
And then in the afternoon. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Hello, Aaron Ware, 19 Kinnicut Ave, the corner of Kinnicut and Buffalo. It's Ware, W-A-R-E. So the traffic study, I can say is concerning, especially when it doesn't consider kids. So I've had 3 kids in this school system, and the middle school actually requires my kids to walk. So if you haven't studied kids walking in that neighborhood and you think 200 parked cars aren't going to be a safety concern, you haven't actually done any research. That's my biggest problem. It's like the engineers they'll say what they need to say because they've been paid to say it, but they don't live here. That's it.
How often do you observe, beside your own kids, how often do you observe children walking by your house on the way to the middle?
Every day, because I work from home. So my home office, literally, I look out the window and I see the kids riding bikes. Actually, I moved here 4 years ago. Karen Ramos, who owned the house, her family owned the house for 100 years. We were the first family to buy this house from that family. And when my kids moved here from suburban Coventry, the first thing I saw was, wow, we have no sidewalks whatsoever. Like, you kids aren't riding in this neighborhood. I have a camera outside the house. Did you research how many times the corner of Kinnicott and Buffalo, did you research how many times cars run that stop sign? Because it's over 100 a day. Over 100, and I have proof. So that research alone should be taken into account with such a large project. And that's my big concern, is like, a lot of this stuff, you guys should have actually done your due diligence before I moved to this neighborhood. And now you should do it again and make sure like a project like this is still part of a neighborhood. And that's it. Like,
My name is Charles Staton. I'm reporting for the Tree Commission. And
Liz Andriotti's Tree Commission. Liz Andriotti's Tree Commission.
but I also put in a letter as a resident of Kennecut Ave. So should I address that at a different time? Because we like to address the Tree Commission items first.
Yeah, I would do that first.
Okay. So waiver, we're addressing waiver number 5, and that is planting trees at the 12 single-family house lots. And we measured based on the scale of the project, the frontage. And if we divide the frontage, which was 1,238 feet, and you divide it into what the Warren subdivision regulations are by 50 feet, that would require 25 trees. And in my experience, my 46th year as being a landscape contractor and planting, I can say literally thousands of trees on house lots, I understand the credibility of Ms. Beck. I think it's great, but I don't agree with her conclusion that you cannot fit 25 trees in front of the 12 house lots on Dallas Court, and you take a left onto Denver. I believe you easily can do that and not what they said, that it will be close proximity to underground utilities such as sewer and water, and above ground utilities such as electric. I know it can be done, and I hope that you do not grant this waiver. You want to add to the canopy? Secondly, it was mentioned that they're in coordination with the landscape surroundings of the neighborhood. Well, Dallas Ave, on the plan, there are no plants. There's the 9 street trees proposed and no plants. That is not in coordination with any neighborhood. So that's what we think about waiver number 5. We're asking you not to grant waiver number 5. You want to talk about the tree canopy?
Sure,
Also?
sure. So for about a year now, there's been a Warren Tree Canopy Advisory Group mandated by the town council, and we have been working with the Green Infrastructure Center. And our goals have been to review the administrative guidelines and ordinances of the town to enhance the health and environmentally friendly nature to improve Warren. We've been looking at this under their guidance, and we are revising our ordinances. And we've come up with a strategic plan to increase the tree canopy, but also to decrease ground temperature, which is helped by the trees. We had a community event on June 11th where we engaged with members of Warren to get their input, to see what their interests were and how we could achieve this. So the work of this group has been a year-long task. It's a cross-functional group of people from different commissions and committees in the town. We're trying to improve and bring ourselves into alignment with communities in the area and national guidelines. And we feel that the waivers that are being requested go in conflict with these, the strategic plan that we've developed.
Thank you.
And working down the tree commission letter to the developers and their responses, the next area we addressed was the monitoring and maintenance of the basins. And we're just requesting that the basins, the sand basins that are collecting the water, be maintained, and that there's a record that is reported to the town of Warren Highway Department, that what is the maintenance record and how it will be recorded. Because it's very important for these drainage areas to work, and they need maintenance. So are they going to hand it over to the town, and are they going to maintain it, and how is this going to happen? These are our questions. The last subject was waiver number 3, which was the parking lot. And so that was the one that the town of Warren zoning requires that you have an island for every 8 spaces. We're hoping that you do not give this waiver. These islands are important to soften the environment, to cool the environment, and to collect water. Now, the second parking lot of this development is towards the Kickamuit River. And the one edge of the parking lot is 50 feet away from the wetland buffer. And when I spoke with the wetland biologist who gave this permit, her name is Jessica Lord, who works for the DEM, she said they are in the legal limit to have a 50-foot differential from the edge of the asphalt parking lot to the wetland buffer. I also spoke with the wetland engineer, Joe Camara, for DEM. He said the same thing. The problem is that the Kickamuit River, we've taken down the dams. And now it's subject to tidal surge. It's subject to high tides and low tides. And we all know the oceans are rising. We all know that wetland buffer is going to come closer to the parking lot if that parking lot is located there. So at least if you do not grant this waiver, there'll be a little more defense of the Kickamuit River with the green spaces that are planted in those 2 parking lots. That's what we wanted to add. And plus that the trees in the parking lots will also help to reduce the temperature and collect the carbon dioxide and give up oxygen. Now, I'll just say briefly what as a resident, I'd like to read this letter that I submitted
You
to
know,
the
we,
plan.
we really, this is.
Okay,
been on
I'll,
quite a while.
for another time.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Steve Clark. I live at Point Farm in Warren, which is, that's CLARK, which is down at the end of past the schools. It's, the largest privately held property in Warren at this point, undeveloped land, about 100 acres of undeveloped land, for which I pay the highest taxes. Okay. One of the things you get from comprehensive plans and zoning ordinances is a reasonable expectation of what the future of your community is going to look like. The area of this that is under discussion here was zoned as R40. Okay, and that was a reasonable expectation of what would happen in this neighborhood. I don't know exactly how it turned out that you can put up 2 50-unit apartment buildings in an R40 zone and not have that create all sorts of red flags that the citizens of Warren should be outraged at. I don't know whether they should be outraged at this committee. I don't know whether they should be outraged at the state, or I don't know whether they should be outraged at the developer. Okay, but in my view, this is a abuse that, you know, is significant, and I feel that this development is wackily out of scale with the area it's involved with. There are apartment buildings on the Kickamuit River that are, you know, 3 stories high, that are relatively, or 2 stories high, that are relatively coherent and everything else, but a 4-story tall 100-unit apartment complex, you know, in this part of the state is absolutely aberrant. I don't know what we can do to make this more. Now, I understand that the words affordable housing are like holy water. You can throw them over things. And I guess if you make 20% of the housing affordable, you get large tax credits, which I believe makes, you know, every developer in the world wants to have their tax credits. But I really wonder how much of this actually is affordable housing, or whether that's just being, you know, thrown out there as you know, the babe that will make, you know, this acceptable. But I really don't feel it is.
So I would like to say something to that, so that you all know, we here are bound by the state laws of affordable housing. If a developer comes to us under a comprehensive plan, they have 25% of their units considered affordable, which is, I did the math, probably more than most of our mortgages right now is affordable. So, but unfortunately, we have to follow the state guidelines. And so it's out of our hands. We may not even, you know, we haven't decided, we might not want this. We all live in the same neighborhoods as you all do. It's not that we're sitting here saying we want to do this. Unfortunately, we have to follow the rules and regulations that the state legislator.
How do we get from R40 to high
Okay,
density?
Right, and this is the thing, and so this is what I'm kind of, I wish I could answer you, but unfortunately, call your legislators, tell them that you don't like this and that you're unhappy with the housing law, and that you would like to see changes, because I think most people in the state are probably feeling the way you are right now. And so you know, we all wish that we had the power, because yes, we bought homes in areas because we expected them to be zoned, and we expected them to be single family homes and to keep this neighborhood that we bought in, right? Unfortunately, when it comes to certain things, our hands are absolutely tied.
There is a, it's called the comprehensive permit, and it is decided by the legislature. We've been in this untenable position where we are presented with this information and we have to take it based on what the law says.
Does it have to be 100 units?
What we have, once this is done, once we've heard from all the public, is the right to deliberate what this proposal is. This was, if you were here at the beginning, this was denied initially, unfortunately, without appropriate justification. And so as a consequence, that denial was overturned. So it's very important that we listen to what is being said, that we give it, both the applicant and people who oppose it, the same degree of courtesy, so that we are in a position of being a fair and just body, somewhat hamstrung by the legislative law that we have to follow. And that is the decision that has been made. Walter Felag was here earlier, and he noted that he never voted for any of this stuff. But our other legislators have been supportive of the legislation and have in fact made it even more, taken more of those things out of our hands. So they are the ones, if you're concerned about how did this happen, it wasn't the planning board, it wasn't the applicant. The applicant's taking advantage of an existing law. It was us who allowed our representatives to make these decisions and take our control over our quality of life out of our hands. And that's the nature of democracy. You have a voice and it should be heard. Yeah, I'm gonna have to close the meeting now. We'll leave the public hearing open. We'll have a continuance of this public hearing. Appreciate those who've spoken. We'll look forward to seeing you and the applicant in July, at our July meeting.
What date?
Motion we adjourn. July 27th, is it? Well, it's motion to close the meeting, but to continue the. Second. All in favor. We do have a few more things. Actually,
Yeah, there's still
I don't
action.
like to tell the shop, if I'm talking, you're talking over me. You're talking over me.
Except some of these people, you've done it so many times.